Hi everyone, it's James here. Welcome to another video. So today is going to be a contest entry for Martin Harris, and if you haven't checked out Martin, I urge you to do so. He's a great guy. I've only discovered him really in the last few months. He's got a great series where he listens to well-known, well-regarded albums which he's never heard before, and the one I saw that alerted me to Martin, he was looking at, I think it was Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd, and since then he's done a lot more. And Martin's a serious collector. He collects a lot of new vinyl and second-hand records too, but he's also a big film buff, and he shows all kinds of things on his channel. He's got a cat called Willow, I believe, and he's incredibly prolific, and I think he's now hit 500 subs. So please do show him some support, give him a sub, and hopefully you can start enjoying his channel if you haven't discovered him already. So Martin's contest contains, I think it's 5 questions. They're all really good questions. I thought it was going to be quite straightforward, this, but in fact I've had to really go around the houses a little bit, trying to pull things out, you know, making sure that everything's going to be right. So these questions, I might answer them in the wrong order because I haven't written them down, so we'll have to see. So the first one, I think it was the first one anyway, was Martin wanted us to show some favourite coloured vinyl. Now I don't have a great deal of coloured vinyl in my collection because I don't do record store day for just various reasons, and I don't go hunting after coloured vinyl. I've got one quite nice splatter vinyl in my collection, but Richard McCook has shown that already in his video, so go and check that out. So I thought I would go for this one, just because it's got a really nice combination of the colour of the vinyl and the label. So first I'll show you the record itself. This is Nectar, and the album Remember the Future, which is a really brilliant 1970s progressive rock album. Absolutely just excellent, just burning musicianship and really great songs. I think it's one song per side. It's got a great gatefold too. And when I bought this, I don't think I knew it was coloured vinyl, so it was quite a nice surprise. And this is it. Now it probably won't come out as well on camera because these things never do, but I like the combination of the colour of the vinyl and the label. So the label obviously has this orange figure with wings, which just looks really nice with the orange record. Now I do have another piece of coloured vinyl to show, and this one is a single, and it's pretty good this, because this is one of my most favourite singles ever. It's probably in my top 10 singles of all time, and it's the song Prime Time by the Tubes, which was a really great pop single from 1979, came from their album Remote Control, which was produced by Todd Rundgren. It's a great record. I need to talk about it. And this single, it was really great. It's got a male female vocal performance, really fantastic. They did some great promo clips for it, but it was a complete flop. I didn't realise. I always thought it was a big hit single, but in fact it had hardly any chart action at all. Now I don't think this is going to come out particularly well on camera, but it does have a pretty groovy coloured splatter effect, which goes really well again with the label. Okay, so that is question 1 done. Now in the order that I'm going to do them, I think I'll do the autographs next. So Martin is a big autograph hunter, and he's got a website where he shows off all his autographs. And I must admit, I'm not a big autograph hunter. I used to be more in my younger days, and in fact somewhere I've got an autograph book at home in my childhood bedroom somewhere, and I can't find it. And it might even have been thrown out. I mean we're going back at least 30 years. It's mainly got Doctor Who based autographs in it, because I was a huge Doctor Who fan back in my youth, but more of that in a minute. And I've not met a great deal of musicians in my life, you know, famous musicians. When I do meet them, I tend not to ask for their autograph because I'd rather kind of chat to them, really. I find it a bit embarrassing asking for autographs. I have done it, but you know, I don't have a huge number in my collection. So the ones I can show you, there's only 2 where I've met a musician and got them to sign a record. The first one is Wings and London Town, and on the back there you can see we've got a signature above Denny Lane. I met him when he came to do a one-man show at a venue called The Platform in Morecambe. This is going back about 5 years now, and it was billed as an evening of songs and stories or something by Denny Lane. I went along. It was a good gig. It was pretty good. It wasn't marvellous, but it was all right. But he told no stories all night. It was a real case of false billing, really. And I went to meet him after the show in the dressing room, and I said, "What happened to the stories you were going to tell?" And he just said, he said, "They made me put that on the posters, but he said, I can't tell stories about the old days anymore because I can't remember." He says, "I've just, my past is just a blank slate almost, I think Denny Lane indulged quite heavily back in the day, in the rock and roll lifestyle. So he was quite apologetic that there were no stories in the show, but I did get to get his autograph. And also, when I met him, it was just after, maybe a few months after, he and Paul had run into each other at a UB40 show in London, and they hadn't seen each other at that point for about, 30 years or something. So I got to ask Denny about that meeting, and he was really positive about it. I don't think it led to a renewal of their friendship, because famously they broke up fairly acrimoniously back in 1981, something like that. But he was able to tell me about it and say that it was great to see Paul again, and that he seemed to think that they buried the hatchet a little bit, so that was quite nice. Now the other autograph record I've got actually came from the same venue. I think it was after that. So the Platform in Morecambe again. I went to see a solo show by Christopher from Squeeze. Where is he now? There he is there. Chris was quite late to the party when it came to doing solo shows. Glenn Tilbrook's been doing them for years and years. Chris finally decided to step up to the plate. He did some songwriting with Francis Dunnery and a couple of other people, and started doing solo shows. So I went along and met him and got him to sign there above his picture on the record. But it was one of those slightly awkward situations where he was basically selling copies of his new album, I think it was a CD, and maybe a couple of other things, but I'd already got them. I'd already got the CD, and maybe his book was out then, I can't remember. Anyway, so I was queuing to get his autograph, and when it came to my turn, most people were asking him to sign the new CD. I didn't buy a CD, so I said to him, "Chris, I'm really sorry, but I've already got your CD, so, could you please sign my 30-year-old copy of Argy Bargy?" And he did it, but I got the sense that he wasn't sort of enormously happy to be doing it, and he would rather have been signing something that he'd kind of sold that evening, which I thought was a little bit, I don't know. I can sort of understand it, I guess, but that's that. So the other two autographs I've got to show are TV based. Now, I was a huge TV head back in the day, or more accurately, I was a big fan of TV sci-fi. The two main shows I was into were Doctor Who and Star Trek. That's the original Star Trek with William Shatner, etc. But Doctor Who was my main love, really. I started watching it when I was about four or 5 years old, and I followed it religiously all the way through to 1989 when it got cancelled. And I have seen the new show. I'm not a big fan of the new show. I was a fan of the old show. But Tom Baker, I mean, he was my absolute idol growing up. Him and Paul McCartney. McCartney was the music. Tom Baker was Doctor Who. He was my hero. I used to dress as him. I can't even begin to explain really the impact that he had. I first met him when I was 15 in the bar at Theatre Clwyd in Mould in Wrexham. I went to see him in a play called An Inspector Calls by J.B. Priestley, and that was one of the great meetings of my life. I'd heard that he always walks into the bar straight after a show to have a drink. Most actors hide away in the dressing room or they slip away into the night, but Tom Baker has got this thing where he makes straight for the bar to get a drink. So I knew this, so I was with my parents and we kind of went up to the bar, and sure enough, within about 10 minutes he just walked in, and it was one of the great meetings of my life. I mean, it was just incredible. I can't really describe it. I mean, I was awake all night after it. He signed a book that I had, and he spoke briefly to me, and I shook his hand, and it was just amazing. Now, I don't have that book to show you because it's at my parents' house, locked away in the attic, but many years later I met him again when he came to Waterstones in Manchester to do a signing session for his autobiography, and I showed him a photograph of me dressed as Doctor Who, Tom Baker, from about 1977 or something, wearing my scarf, and then I asked him to sign the book. So he put, I'm going to have to read this myself now. It says, for James, 15 years on, happy days, Tom Baker, 1997. Yeah, I think I'd miscalculated. I don't think it was 15 years. I think it was more than that probably. Or maybe that was right, I don't know. Anyway, Tom Baker, fantastic. And this next one, this was again one of the great meetings of my life. Leonard Nimoy from Star Trek. This was the closest thing I think I've ever experienced to, say, meeting someone like Paul McCartney. I mean, Tom Baker, he was a British actor on TV, you know, but Leonard Nimoy came from America and he was from Star Trek. It was a real big deal. He got this book out, which was a sequel to his original book that he wrote back in the 1970s called I Am Not Spock, where he tried to dissociate himself from, you know, being Mr. Spock. And then, you know, years later, he just made up his mind, actually, I am Spock after all. So he wrote a sequel book called I Am Spock, which I was going to buy anyway, but then I heard that he was coming to do a signing session in the Waterstones bookseller in Leeds, so I was like, I've got to meet him. So I went down there and they were queuing around the block, you know, all the way out the door, all the way down the street. So I got in line. This time I actually was buying the book, and I will still remember to my dying day, I got to the front of the queue. It wasn't very satisfactory because there were so many people that they were basically herding people through really quickly. So he was sat at this desk, there was a person with him, and there was a pile of books. And as you got to the front of the queue, you basically, I mean, the books might even have been pre-signed, I can't remember, but you just got about 5 seconds just to basically say hello and shake his hand, and then you were moved on really quickly. So I got my book, but it wasn't personally signed, but it was signed. And he did, I think he shook my hand, he smiled at me and he said hello, and that was it, gone. But that is burned onto my mind's eye now that I met Leonard Nimoy. I've never met William Shatner, and I would love to do that. So I must admit, I'm not as into Star Trek now as I was when I was a kid. I watch it now, and there's some episodes I like, and there's some that I actually find quite distasteful now. I'm still a big fan of the original movies, and but we'll talk about that in a different video, I think. Oh, actually, I forgot there was one more music autograph to show. This this was an offer. I can't remember how I came by this, but this is Flowers in the Rain by The Move, which was the first single ever played on Radio 1 here in the UK, and you can't particularly see it all that well, but this is actually signed by the drummer, Bev Bevan, in black ink there. He was one of my drumming heroes when I was growing up in my teens. I got really into The Move and ELO, and you know, he was one of the guys I used to play along with, drumsticks on the pillows and everything. I met him a couple of times. He's a nice guy, but I didn't meet him on that occasion. Like I said, that came through the post. Can't quite remember. Actually, it's signed by somebody else, isn't it? It's signed by, goodness me, I think probably Carl Wayne, actually. That's Carl Wayne, the singer. He's died now. He died a few years back, but I reckon that is probably Carl Wayne's autograph as well. I've never noticed that before. That's amazing. I always assumed it was just signed by Bev Bevan, but it's signed by, I think it's signed by Carl Wayne. So he was the guy who actually sang Flowers in the Rain. Anyway, there we go. This video is getting a bit long. So, Martin wants us to show a comedy or a novelty record. Now, I struggled a bit with this one. I've never really bought comedy records. I'm a big fan of comedy, but I just don't buy comedy records. I've got one which is not meant to be a comedy record, but it's like a kind of, it is a comedy record in a way. It's kind of one of those, it's so bad, it's not even it's so bad it's good, it's so bad it's terrible, but it just kind of made me laugh. This is Doctor in Distress, which Doctor Who was cancelled in 1986 by the BBC. They had to bring it back because there was such a massive fan outcry, but there was a guy called Ian Levine who was a very, very successful Northern Soul DJ. He was also a big Doctor Who fan, and he was a record producer. And this was not long after Live Aid, and he got the idea to get these, I don't know, D-list celebrities together in order to sing a kind of bring back Doctor Who song. It's called Doctor in Distress. It is the most terrible record that you'll ever hear in your life. It's truly atrocious. And the people who are on it, I mean, you've got people like, well, there's Bucks Fizz on it, to be fair. Hot Gossip, who were a kind of dance troupe. You've got Faith Brown, she was a TV impressionist, I think, back in the 1980s. Justin Hayward and John Lodge are on it. So actually, you know, there's a couple of half-decent people, but there's also a lot of real kind of like D-list and E-list people on there. Hazel Dean, I can't remember who she was. And the current actor at the time who played Doctor Who was on there, Colin Baker, and he later said that he really regretted doing it because it was really cringy and embarrassing. So anyway, I thought I'd show that. And this one I thought I would show because this is the first record I actually ever owned. I got a Danzek record player given to me when I was about 3 years old, and on the turntable there was a record by this pair, Pinky and Perky, who were a pair of singing pigs back in the 1960s. They had their own TV show, but I never had the jacket for this record. The record was on the turntable when I got the record player, but I never had a jacket for it. And then last year I found this really nice copy of it in a charity shop here in the UK, so I thought I would buy it. I might do a little needle drop on this. There's a song on here, it's their version of Oranges and Lemons, which probably is my first memory of ever listening to a record on a record player, and I loved it. So I'll play you a bit of that. I'm just cutting in because I forgot a question, so you'll see a dog has magically materialised behind me in the shot. So the question I forgot was favourite soundtrack album. I don't collect a lot of soundtrack records really, but this one sprung to mind as being just a great one. It's one of my favourite films of all time. This is Midnight Cowboy, which contains the brilliant Harry Nilsson song Everybody's Talking, written by Fred Neil originally, but Nilsson's version of it is just absolutely timeless, you know. There's such pathos and heartbreak in the movie. If you haven't seen it, you know, it's brilliant. John Voight and Dustin Hoffman. Also, you've got the John Barry, you know, sort of orchestrated stuff on here. Really nice. And there's a couple of really great psychedelic tracks. The two characters, they go to this kind of New York acid party, kind of like a swingers party in New York. And I can't think what the song is now on here. It's on side 2. There's just a really great psychedelic acid rock track on here. I can't think what it's called. Anyway, Midnight Cowboy, great film, great soundtrack. I'm sure I've done these out of order. Martin wanted us to just quickly talk about a favourite film and a favourite TV show. Now I'm not going to show, well actually I am going to show Doctor Who really quickly, but I feel like I've talked a lot about Doctor Who already, so I won't talk about that. You know, if I'm hand on heart, that's my favourite TV show of all time. But I wanted to show this one because this made a massive impact on me back in the 80s when I was a teenager at school, as it did a whole generation of kids. I'll show the young ones, which was just, it had an incalculable influence on my teenage brain really. I learned all the episodes, you know, I could recite them. Rick Mayall was always my favourite, I used to watch this with my dad, strangely enough. Most people's dads used to make their kids turn it off, but my dad actually loved this show and we used to watch it together. It was just fantastic. It was just anarchic, crazy, really experimental for its time, really alternative. It had music in every episode, you know, Motorhead appeared in it and The Damned appeared in it. It was such a cool show, and it occupies a very special place in my heart. Thinking about it, I've not pulled it off the shelf, but I actually do have Adrian Edmondson's autograph as well. He wrote a book back in the day. I think it was a novel, and I got him to sign it, and that again was I think that was in Waterstones in Leeds, where I'd met Mr. Spock, Leonard. And thinking about it, I also got Douglas Adams' autograph in that bookshop as well, but I think that book is at my parents' house, so I can't show that one. And favourite film, I'm not big into films, but I do have some favourites. I picked this one because I thought it was likely to be something which nobody else showed. I'm not going to say hand on heart that it's my favourite movie of all time, but I did love it back in the day, and I've watched it a couple of times in recent years with my younger son, and I always really enjoy it. This is The Early Bird by Norman Wisdom, who was a great British comedian, musical star, turned film star back in the 1950s and 60s. He was great. He was a fantastic physical clown, but he was also just a really good actor, just a really good comedy actor. He used to play this recurring character, either called Pitkin, or there was another name that he used to have, maybe Puck. And he was always the underdog, and in the films he made, he was always this underdog character who was colliding head on with, you know, figures of authority, and he would always win through in the end. And in this film he plays a milkman who's basically only got maybe like 2 or 3 streets that he serves milk to in the mornings, and there's this huge corporate dairy business called Consolidated Dairies, who were trying to put him out of business. So they're smashing his bottles. They even poison his horse, you know, because he delivers his milk on a horse and cart. And he decides to go down to the offices of Consolidated Dairies. They've got this like massive, huge office, you know, to confront them, and it's just absolute devastation ensues. It's always completely accidental, but you know, the building ends up, you know, literally falling down. You know, it's a really, really funny film. It's got a couple of great supporting performances in it. John Le Mesurier is in it. He was in Dad's Army, Richard McCook will know that. And a great character actor called Jerry Desmond, who plays Mr. Hunter, who's the guy in charge of this kind of awful Consolidated Dairies. It's really funny. There's a fantastic scene on the golf course where Norman Wisdom, he pretends to be a vicar. He dresses as a vicar and goes and plays a round of golf with this guy from Consolidated Dairies to sort of try and appeal to his better side and to try and get him to reform, you know, his character. And this game of golf just goes disastrously wrong. You know, the guy ends up a tree trying to shoot a ball from up the tree, and he falls down. He falls out of the tree. It's fantastic. I love it. Great film. So I think that's it. I don't think I've missed any questions out. I hope not. Fantastic. I really enjoyed that, Martin. Nice idea for a contest. So yeah, please do check out Martin's channel. Like I said, I think it's his 500 subs contest, and I'll put the link down below, and I'll see you soon, folks. Take care. Bye bye.